risers. These are empty spaces in the building where anybody that is an operator can pull their cable and take it to the cell tower and just connect it. So all that information that is being accumulated from an antenna comes through the wire inside the building, comes down to my basement, and is carried over a fiber or a cable network to my central switching system. In India, unfortunately, I have to rely on microwave. And that is why you'll always see these round dishes, right? The round dishes that you see are the microwave backhaul instruments. And one thing that you know about microwave, it always has to be point to point. That means they always have to look at one another. And microwaves are very sensitive to being aligned with one another. If I phase out, you'll have a drop call. Right? If I phase out, you'll have a drop call, and calls will not go through. That is why the towers have to be pretty rigid. And that is why I need so much steel in my antennas. If they go, for an antenna, it's not so concerned about whether they move out because they're not aligned with anything else. All the antenna has to do is to make sure that in a high wind, when the monsoons come or whatever, it doesn't fall down. So I engineer it to that. But once I put a microwave, the mechanics of it is different. Why do I have to use microwave? I don't have fiber. I don't have any terrestrial means of taking it through the ground. All right? That is the fundamental problem as to why. And because microwave has to clear the buildings and tree line, otherwise once I have interference from another building or trees, I can't do it. That's why they have to be high. So this is the problem we face in India because of the fact that we've never had a superior landline infrastructure. The rest of the world, mobility came after landline was very heavily penetrated. So this is one of the areas why we suffer from this impediment over here. So we talked about new cell sites, right? Continuous optimization efforts, as I just talked about, drive test, things and so on. Continuous monitoring. Now, this is one of the things I was sharing with some folks. Please remember that when we are moving from voice networks to data networks, there is a fundamental paradigm shift. What is the paradigm shift? The paradigm shift is as follows, especially in a market which has 95% prepaid. And there are two aspects to this. One is what I call the network aspect, one is the customer experience aspect. Let me look at the network aspect. In a voice network, we, for the last 100 years, know how to build and manage voice networks. Since the days of Graham Bell and Marconi, right? We know that no individual uses more than 500 minutes. And we know the peaks, when there's a peak usage, when most people go to sleep, when most people wake up. We know all those rhythms. And so we design our networks for those types of capacity, right? We know how many people at any point are living in an area, how many people will access it, maximum 500. We know what the minutes of use are, so we know kind of what buffers we have to put in place, right? That's the network, right? And it's circuit switch. That means is that if there is a capacity constraint in a cell tower, you'll get a fast busy. You'll know upfront. And if you're trying to be handoff, you'll have a drop call. But by and large, that's it. Customer experience. Everybody knows what a minute is. You intuitively know, you don't need anything to tell you when a minute plus minus is transpired, right? You all get used to it. Now let's move to a data network. A data network, right, by definition, right, has to prioritize voice. So it's not as if it's now carrying data and voice. So whenever I want to put voice over a data network, I have to prioritize data. That is by definition, it's going to have to use more bandwidth than it is using for data. That's why most people don't want to put voice on data. I mean, you look at RIL, why is one of the challenges they're facing? Because in the 2300 band, which is principally a data band, it's difficult to start putting volt on it. Right? Because it takes a significant amount of your bandwidth. It's not the most optimal utilization because you have to prioritize voice. Data you don't prioritize, right? It's what we call store and send. Email, you get it when you get it, right? SMS, you get it when you get it. Any other thing, you get it when you get it. Voice, you can't get it when you get it, right? Because when you start a conversation, if I don't prioritize the call, you'll get what I call clipping. You'll pick up bits and pieces, right? That's exactly what happens when my network is not optimized for data, for voice, right? So this is one thing. So when I'm moving to a data network, I have to begin to look at this. The second thing is that I cannot predict demand. If 10 people decide to load the movie of the week, I'm finished. Right? And I don't know that, It's not as if, see, if 10 people talk, you can only talk in time slots, right? But when you get data, it's all trying to happen at the same time.
But when you sell, you don't say that, right? You say,
so,
download the faster, get the...
But this is, but, yeah, but...
100 GB in 5... I mean, you promise everything. Then
no.
the problem is in what you promise.
So let me say this. So when the problem, if you look carefully, globally, by the way, it is, and this has been upheld in the courts, when we say use as much as you can, whatever, it's on a best efforts basis. Because I'll tell you why. Why is it best efforts and why the courts uphold it is data networks, it is the laws of physics. I'll tell you why. If I start this cell tower and it has got certain amount of capacity and I sell that capacity, God forbid, somebody starts, it's, I'll just say it's a mobile. I don't know who's going to come in, who's going to go out, and who's going to start all of a sudden go viral on a particular YouTube thing, right? Or, yeah, because the biggest things that we see is that most people, when they start using data, are starting to use video. Either YouTube, pictures, movies, streaming. So these are very heavy consumers of bandwidth. So the moment that begins to happen, a data network will do two things. First, it will shrink its coverage area to try and provide better customer experience for those who are closer to the cell tower. It's the laws of physics. That's the way the system is designed. So if you started in the periphery, and all of a sudden the demand, for whatever reason, you'll have a drop call. Your session will drop. All right? So that is again part of, and again, if people start downloading a lot of high bandwidth intensive, right, speeds will deteriorate. And this is classic. I mean, you go home, you have a local Wi-Fi in your house, let's say, the more users, speeds come down, right? Because at any point in time, I only have so much bandwidth in a cell tower. When that begins to start getting utilized, now when you say, how can I manage it? It's very hard. Suppose I say, listen, I know that 100 people will use on average of X. When that average goes haywire, I finish again. I can't control the consumer's use of how they're going to use data. That is a fundamental thing. Now, coming to the user experience, users, especially when you're in a prepaid environment, have a hard time managing bits and bytes. I don't know, if I pay for 10 megabits, I don't know how fast I'm going to use it. Because when I'm downloading a YouTube or a movie, nobody tells me you're going to be downloading X megabits of content. One of the biggest problems we have today is two things. One is that consumers saying is that, oh my gosh, you cut me off in the middle of my session. Well, if you've got $50 and in the middle of your session you utilize your $50. So today what many operators are doing are giving credit even when you don't have credit, in order to ensure that you have a relatively thing, and then when you top up again, we try and take that back. So that is an area we're learning. All right, so these are things that are different and unique in our Indian context that we have to kind of work through. The other thing that we find is that we get any number of complaints in our call center from new data users. They put $50. The first call we get is that, you're big robbers, chor hai aap. I say, Kyun? He says, I put 50 rupees, I didn't even use one bit of data, and you've taken my 50 rupees. All right, you go into the system and you download the CDR records, and we ask, do you have YouTube? Haan, hai sir. Do you have the WhatsApp? Haan sir. you have Facebook. Where did you put all this? When I bought it, they asked me, what do you want? Put everything. The point of sale guy, everybody, when they buy a smartphone, want all the applications, right? They don't think that the moment you turn on your phone, all those applications are going to be syncing with their home base and are going to be downloading updates, right? So even though you may not have pressed the send button, you're using data.
I mean, in this context, I think the company should take up customer awareness sessions, because in such situations, obviously I myself have faced these situations, but unfortunately no one, and I have to say all the call centers of all the companies, they are manned by really illiterate people. They are never ever able to say anything what is technically wrong. I mean, the most they can do is that escalate the call. So you are spending so much on advertisement, you're spending so much on this. I mean, a basic customer education, I think, would solve a lot of your headaches and our
So,
headaches also.
you're right. I think you're right. I'm sorry.
The compliance issue. I mean, okay, once there is a problem, how do you handle it? How do you deal with it? Companies are
Also,
not
Is the laxity deliberate?
No, is the do trains run late because the engineer is deliberately delaying your train? I don't know. But let me say this, it's a problem. I acknowledge it, and yes, can we be doing a better job? I think yes, we can do a better job in terms of education. But an operator faces multiple challenges in terms of what do they do, right, in terms of that business model. So let me, and please don't, this is not an excuse, right? I'm just trying to say, look, what are the things that we struggle with when we try to answer this question? I pay 30% more for every megahertz of spectrum versus the global standard. That means not even people who bid for spectrum in Europe, UK, and America pay as much as I pay for a megahertz of spectrum. 30% more, and this is factual. I pay global prices for my network equipment, right? Because almost 95% is imported, right? International prices. Nobody gives me a discount because I'm an Indian. What is my average revenue per user compared to global standards? Right? The average user globally contributes 45 to 50 US dollars, ARPU, average. My ARPU is $2.50 US dollars. So think about it, 30% more for my spectrum, global prices for my network, which is bulk of it, right? Between spectrum and network, that's a significant part of my investment. And I get $2.50 from an average consumer. So you can see where the challenge is from our side. So obviously we are trying to save our pennies here and there, because why? Look at the last 20 years. Tell me one year when our prices went up, even with inflation at 8 and 9%. So what is happening? Operators have been absorbing the costs into its margins to try and keep the consumer kind of satisfied in terms of affordability, because this is one of the things that we are concerned about. It costs me every time I have to answer a call, cost-wise, when a consumer person picks up, a customer care person comes, anywhere from 15 to 25 bucks, depending on how long it lasts.
So you should have systems to address that.
So
that
these are the
10 calls to the first call should be sufficient. There are 10 calls being made. You're making
So-
money in
Once you
any
face
case.
a problem, it will continue
It
for a
will
while.
continue.
So those are things. So those are things. Part of this is also the learning, because a lot of the customers, as you say, don't themselves know what the problem is. So I wish they knew the problem. They could articulate the problem. They could tell me what the problem is. 95% are prepaid. They don't even have a bill to tell them what the problem is. So initially, when they're calling, we have to start doing some diagnostics in terms of trying to figure out what the person's problem is. So this is again the issue of, say, when I'm in a foreign country and 95% of the population is postpaid, the moment a customer calls, you know what the first thing that pops up on the customer care thing is your bill and your history. So I know immediately what your problem is, because 80%, 85% of the problems are invariably billing related. Right? About 10, 15% are related to network issues, right? So think about this. So therefore, since it's not readily available, the process of trying to solve your problem gets that much more complex. No, and I'm not saying please don't take this as trying to offer excuses. All I'm trying to say is that in this milieu in which we are working, there's always a bit of give and take in terms of, in order to maintain affordability, in order to maintain the prices, not raise the prices, continue to pay what the government is asking. This is why we fight so strenuously when the municipalities come to us and say, hey, what's your problem? Why don't you, I'll tell you, in Delhi, it per cell tower, all right, went from 50 lakhs to 1 lakh to 5 lakhs. 50,000 to 1 lakh to 5, all in the space of 3 years.
So annual?
Yes, one-time fees to get permission to put a cell tower on it. In some places it's 7.5 lakhs. Yes, that's right.
How many cell sites are needed per 10,000 population?
So again, depends on the density and depends upon your usage. But a cell tower, I'm not talking about data now, I'm talking about voice, can support 2,500 simultaneous calls in any point in time, right? So, obviously not all 2,500, and it's all milliseconds worth of conversations, right? So that's why, but.
How much do they actually support?
Yeah, about 2,500.
And how much do actually, in terms of subscribers, how many could come onto that tower?
How the thing is that the moment you reach capacity, you start getting drop calls. All right, that is a self-healing.
Who keeps track of that? Is that information available
Correct.
to the subscriber? And
No.
do I know that the next door cell tower is totally booked and there's no space, and when I subscribe, I'm asking for trouble?
The only time you'll know is when you try and make a call on that.
Why don't you all share that information? Why don't you keep it transparent?
Because it's dynamic. Because in a sense, you get to know immediately when you hit the send button, right? See, the thing is that everything is so, because when you hit a retry, you'll know that in half a second you sometimes get through, right? So it's very dynamic in terms of the length of time. I can't then call you back and say, oh, because by the time I call you back, somebody else may have made a call, right? It's all happening in milliseconds, right? So to try and keep people abreast of what is happening on a cell tower. So that's why I'm saying is that, at the end, the consumer, the moment he or she tries to make a call, knows immediately whether there's congestion, whether he'll say, they say call failure, try again. And also please note, our systems are designed to not only look at the first tower, but also what we call the next best server. So if there is a cell tower here, and this is your primary server, and we find that this is congested, but an adjoining cell tower is less used, we try, if the signal strength is good and your phone is good, we try and put you on this as well, and see if you can continue a conversation. So the systems try and dynamically manage some of it. That's why it's difficult to say upfront,
So, based on the cell population of Maharashtra, let's say, 10 crore, 50 lakh people, you have some 91,000 odd cell towers, which is for 1,150 on average. You're more than capacity. You said that 2,500 calls can be handled. Why do you want more towers?
Because of the issue of where these towers are and where the new demand is coming and where data is coming. I'm saying this is set up for voice, right? And this is set up when I was having 900 and 1800, all right? So now what happens is that this cell tower here could do 2500 in this location for 900 megahertz spectrum. All right, if I wanted to start offering service in 1800, you would have to put another cell tower here. If I wanted to offer 2300, I'd have to put another cell tower closer. And if I wanted to use 21, I'd have to put something in between. Every one of them, because they're on different spectrum bands, right, are having to have locations of cell towers closer to the consumer. So if I was using 900, I could be this distance and you'd absolutely get clear signal. If I try to do the same thing on the 23 megahertz, you'd never be able to make that call. So I'd have to put a call, I'm just using figure, a little closer to you, right? Which is why RIL requires 30% more towers, because they're using 2300. All right, so this is when you have this, remember, this is the challenge. I'm moving from voice, and I'm moving to data, and I'm moving from 3G, 4G, which requires 30% more towers, only because of the physics of it.
I want to ask you this, you said the problem is state governments are not issuing guidelines. Is it across India or are there some states which are particularly more
Kerala is one of the first states which has complied with the DOT guidelines. Tamil Nadu has, Andhra is there, Telangana.
southern states?
They are aligning with, they've aligned with the DOT guidelines.
So has that made an impact on the service quality?
Yes, it has made an
Can you
impact.
correlate?
And again, it's just the laws of physics, because we're saying
Like,
that.
are you seeing it on the ground level that because of this there is a
Yes, some
improvement?
call drops lesser.
Yeah, clearly, yes, we are, because, for example, when the Kerala High Court came out and said very categorically that there was no harm from, as long as we follow the safety norms, we were able to get more towers, and two things happened. The call drops reduced, and the usage increased. So what was happening was that people were not using the system because they said, why bother to make a call? The call is not good. There's a hole here, and you get used to it, and you say, I know I'll never get a call here.
So this Peninsula region is compliant.
In fact, most, if you look at the QoS, I don't know whether we have it right, if you look at most states, except places like Mumbai, Delhi, and within states, places like Pune for a while, Bangalore, Hyderabad,